A millionaire stopped his car when he saw a 70-year-old teacher picking up trash on the street. What no one knew was that she had already changed his life in the past. This is the story of Mabel, a dedicated teacher who, after decades of teaching children, had become invisible to society. And Vernon, a successful businessman who, upon seeing her again, couldn't ignore the scene before him. What he did next touched the internet and revealed a surprising connection between them. Stick around until the end, because this story will make you believe that there's still room in the world for genuine acts of kindness. Mabel Hart, at 70 years old, pushed her old shopping cart through the streets of Portland, Oregon. Her trembling hands gripped the cold metal of the cart as she rummaged through the trash cans along West Burnside Street. With her worn-out coat and battered shoes, Mabel was just another invisible figure in the urban landscape. But what no one realized was how much this woman had done for the local community. For over 40 years, Mabel was a dedicated teacher. At a small public school, she taught generations of children, often staying beyond work hours without getting anything extra for it. She was known for offering tutoring to students who struggled, always with patience and care. However, forced retirement and school budget cuts left her stranded. Her income barely covered the basics. With no family nearby and mounting debts, collecting recyclables became her only option. Despite her situation, Mabel never stopped being kind. Even on tough days, whenever she saw a child heading to school, she would smile and wish them a good day. Her gaze, though tired, still held the sparkle of someone who had brightened many lives through the power of education. On a cold December morning, while digging through a trash can on the corner of NW 23rd Avenue, Mabel found an old notebook. The colorful cover and pages filled with children's drawings made her heart race. As she flipped through the notebook, she saw short essays, drawings, and school activities. Each page brought back memories of the classroom, the kids, and the stories she used to tell. While Mabel got lost in her memories, a black SUV stopped at the traffic light next to her. Vernon Hale, a 50-year-old tech entrepreneur, was behind the wheel. He was coming from a hectic routine, always rushing from one meeting to another. But in that moment, something made him stop. Maybe it was the way Mabel held the notebook, almost as if she were embracing a piece of her own history. The light turned green, but Vernon didn't move. Horns blared behind him, but he remained still. Without a second thought, he pulled over and got out of the car. As he approached, he saw Mabel's face more clearly. Her gray hair, her distant but still gentle look. Something inside him began to stir. "Mrs. Mabel?" he asked, his voice choked. Mabel looked up, surprised. "Do I know you?" "It's me, Vernon Hale. You were my 5th grade teacher." Mabel's eyes filled with emotion. "Vernon? The boy who had trouble reading?" He nodded, memories flooding his mind. "Yes, you used to stay with me after class, helping me. You told me I just needed more time and that everyone had their own pace. I never forgot that." Silence hung in the air for a few moments. Vernon, still in disbelief at what he was seeing, knelt beside her. "Why are you here?" Mabel gave a sad smile, but without self-pity. "Sometimes life takes turns we don't expect. But I'm okay, Vernon. Don't worry." Those words, spoken with such serenity, hit Vernon like a punch to the gut. He, who had always believed success was solely tied to personal effort, realized that the system often left the best people behind. Vernon held Mabel's trembling hands and said firmly, "I can't change what happened, but I can make sure you never have to do this again. Trust me, Mrs. Mabel. What you did for me, I'm going to do for you now." Vernon helped Mabel to her feet. He noticed how light and fragile she felt, as if time and hardship had taken a part of her vitality. Without saying another word, he guided her to the car. Mabel hesitated. The shopping cart, filled with plastic bags, recyclables, and the old notebook, seemed too heavy to leave behind. "I'll come back for all of this. Right now you're coming with me," Vernon said in a firm but gentle tone. Still confused, Mabel nodded and got into the car. For a moment, silence filled the space. Vernon didn't know where to start. He wanted to ask questions, to understand what had happened, how she ended up in this situation. But he was afraid anything he said might sound like judgment. "Do you have somewhere I can take you?" he finally asked, keeping his eyes on the road. "I live in a little house not far from here. It's not much, but it's my home," Mabel replied, her voice low, almost a whisper. As they drove, Vernon tried to process everything. He remembered the teacher who had transformed his life. Back then, he was an insecure boy who could barely read aloud in class. Other students laughed, and he felt small. But Mabel never left him behind. She would offer extra lessons, invent reading games, and bring books she thought he might like. Most importantly, she believed in him. When they reached Mabel's small house, Vernon felt a tightness in his chest. The peeling walls, rusty gate, and broken windows told a story of neglect. Mabel opened the door, revealing a simple but clean interior. In the corner of the room stood a bookshelf with a few old books. On the table, there was a teapot and a chipped cup. "Sorry for the mess, I wasn't expecting company," she said, trying to hide her embarrassment. "Mrs. Mabel, don't worry. I'm here because I want to help. Tell me what happened. How did you end up here?" Mabel sat down slowly, her eyes fixed on the empty cup. "After I retired, the bills started piling up. I've always lived with little, but without my full salary. Everything became harder. I tried to find a job, but no one wants to hire someone my age. When my savings ran out, I had to find a way to survive. And here I am." Vernon felt a mix of anger and sadness. Anger at a system that allowed a woman like Mabel to reach this point, and sadness at the dignity with which she handled it all. "You shouldn't have to go through this. I'm only where I am today because you believed in me when no one else did," he said. His voice choked. Mabel smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. "Just knowing that makes me so happy, Vernon. Don't feel obligated to help me. I get by with very little. I know you do. But that doesn't mean you should have to accept this situation. From today on, things are going to change." Vernon stood up, determined. He grabbed his phone and started making calls. Mabel watched him, not fully understanding what was happening. But deep down, something told her that this reunion was no mere coincidence. Vernon didn't waste any time. Right there in Mabel's small living room, he began using all his influence. With his phone in hand, he made quick, direct calls. He reached out to business friends, contacted social organizations, and, most importantly, mobilized his communications team. "Mabel, do you trust me?" he asked after hanging up for the third time. She nodded, still not quite understanding his plan. "Great, because the world needs to hear your story." Within a few hours, Vernon's team arrived at Mabel's house. Photographers, videographers, and even a well-known local journalist began documenting the space, talking to her, and learning about her journey. At first, Mabel felt uncomfortable, but Vernon assured her that she had full control over what would be shared. "This isn't about exposure, it's about inspiration. You helped so many kids, Mabel. You left a mark on every single one of them, including me. Now it's time for you to receive all that love back," Vernon explained, his tone a mix of respect and admiration. While the team worked, Vernon was on another important call. This time, he was speaking with the administration of a prestigious private school in Portland. "Yes, I understand, but do you know who she is? How many teachers have the experience and heart of Mabel Hart? I'm talking about someone who dedicated her life to education. This is a unique opportunity for your school," he argued. It didn't take long for the first photos and videos of Mabel to start circulating on social media. Vernon used his personal and company profiles to share her story. He wrote a heartfelt post, explaining how Mabel had been a positive influence in his life and how fate had brought them back together. "Today I reunited with my 5th grade teacher, a woman who believed in me when I was just a kid who could barely read. Now it's my turn to give back. Meet Mabel Hart, a retired teacher who should never have been forgotten," read the caption of a photo showing the two of them smiling in her small living room. The post went viral. Emotional comments began pouring in. Mabel's former students showed up, sharing stories about how she had made a difference in their lives. "She taught me to read. She helped me overcome my shyness. I'll never forget the stories she told." The messages were endless. The story's impact grew quickly, drawing attention from both local and national media outlets. TV channels, newspapers, and news websites all wanted to cover the story. The internet was flooded with short videos of Mabel sharing her classroom memories, and every new testimony reinforced the importance of education and recognizing teachers. But Vernon didn't stop there. He knew that visibility alone wouldn't solve Mabel's practical problems. That same day, he organized a crowdfunding campaign to raise funds so she could live with dignity. The initial goal was reached within a few hours. Business leaders, anonymous donors, and even celebrities contributed, moved by her story. While the internet buzzed with excitement, Mabel watched it all with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "I never imagined so many people would still remember me," she said, wiping away a stubborn tear. By the end of that intense day, Vernon received an important call. On the other end, a serious voice asked to speak with Mabel. "Mrs. Hart, this is the principal of Jefferson School. We'd like to know if you would be interested in returning to the classroom, but this time as an educational consultant. Your knowledge and experience would be invaluable to our students and teachers." Mabel brought her hand to her chest, unable to believe what she was hearing. A new opportunity was unfolding, and this time, she would no longer have to choose between working and simply surviving. Mabel held the phone with trembling hands. The offer from Jefferson School felt like a dream too far-fetched to be real. An educational consultant? She, who just days ago had been rummaging through trash, now had the chance to return to the school environment, this time sharing her experience and guiding new teachers. Vernon, sitting beside her, gave her an encouraging smile. "You deserve this, Mabel, more than anyone." The next day, they went to the school together. The impressive building, with its spacious hallways and well-equipped classrooms, was different from the public schools where Mabel had worked. However, the smell of books and the sound of students chatting brought back a familiar feeling. The principal, a middle-aged woman named Janet Collins, welcomed Mabel with a warm hug. "It's an honor to have you with us. Your story moved us, but above all, your legacy as a teacher is truly inspiring," she said. During the school tour, Mabel was introduced to teachers and students. Some recognized her from the internet, while others were simply curious to meet this sweet yet strong woman. At her first meeting with the teachers, Mabel felt a bit out of place. But when she started talking about her experience, the atmosphere changed. She shared stories of how she adapted activities for struggling students, the strategies she used to keep everyone engaged, and most importantly, how she believed every child had a unique potential. "It's not just about teaching subjects, but about building confidence. Sometimes a simple 'I believe in you' can change someone's life," she said, as Vernon, standing in the back, nodded, knowing better than anyone how true that was. Within days, Mabel had become part of the school's routine. She observed classes, suggested new approaches, and whenever possible spoke with the students. They quickly became enchanted with the soft-spoken lady with incredible stories. The buzz on social media remained intense. The video of Mabel's first day at Jefferson School spread quickly. The footage showed her walking through the halls, hugging students and exchanging ideas with teachers. Vernon, always by her side, made sure his communications team captured every moment. But not everything was easy. The exposure brought old wounds to the surface. During one of her visits to the school, Mabel was approached by a woman who seemed distressed. "Mrs. Mabel, you don't remember me, do you?" Mabel tried to place the face but couldn't. "I'm Kyle's mom. Do you remember him?" Mabel's expression shifted. Kyle had been one of her students years ago, a sweet boy who struggled at home. Despite her efforts, Kyle had dropped out of school and later fell into addiction. Mabel had always blamed herself for not helping him enough. "I remember him. How is he?" The woman took a deep breath. "He's no longer with us, but I needed to tell you this in person. It wasn't your fault. Quite the opposite. In his last days, he always talked about your classes, how you made him feel special. He kept a note you wrote for him, saying he was smart and just needed to believe in himself." The tears came. Mabel hugged the woman with all the strength she had. In that moment, she realized her work had touched lives in ways she had never imagined. Vernon, watching from a distance, understood that this pain also carried a powerful message. He decided it wasn't just about helping Mabel financially or ensuring her comfort, but also about sharing her story far and wide. That night, Vernon posted a new video. In it, Mabel spoke openly about her pains and her victories, about how a teacher's work goes beyond the classroom, and how even in the hardest moments, love and dedication always find a way to touch people's hearts. Days turned into weeks. Mabel was no longer just an educational consultant. She began attending events, giving lectures, and even recorded an online course for new teachers. Her story reached schools across the country, and invitations to share her experiences kept coming. Then on a cold morning, Mabel received a letter from the Department of Education. When she opened the envelope, her eyes filled with tears. Invitation to receive the National Medal of Excellence in Education, a well-deserved honor that promised to take her story to even more people. The letter arrived as a breath of hope. The ceremony would be held in Washington, D.C., in the grand auditorium of the Department of Education. Vernon didn't waste any time. He knew that moment had to be unforgettable. He hired a team to handle every detail, from travel and lodging to the elegant dress Mabel would wear at the ceremony. No turning down help this time, he said with a playful smile. Mabel, still in disbelief, allowed herself to be swept away by his generosity. Deep down, she still harbored the fear of not deserving so much, but Vernon made a point of reminding her every day of the impact she had on his life, and so many others. When they arrived in Washington, D.C., Mabel was welcomed with warmth. Journalists awaited at the airport, eager for the story of the teacher who had moved the internet. At the press conference, she maintained her usual humility, answering sincerely and sharing how teaching had always been her greatest passion. On the day of the ceremony, the auditorium was packed. Besides educators and officials, dozens of Mabel's former students filled the audience. Vernon had organized a surprise. He found as many former students as possible and brought them to the Capitol to witness this special moment. When Mabel stepped onto the stage, the crowd rose in applause. Visibly emotional, she brought her hands to her chest, trying to absorb the energy around her. I never imagined being here. I always thought my work was simple, almost invisible. Teaching has always been my passion. I believe every child deserves someone who believes in them. And today, being surrounded by so many beloved faces makes me realize that love and dedication truly leave a mark. She paused, looking at Vernon in the front row. I'd like to thank one person in particular, Vernon Hale. When I met him, he was just a boy who needed a little extra attention. Today, he's a man who not only changed his own life, but also mine. If it weren't for him, I'd still be invisible. Thank you, Vernon. You gave me a new chance. The audience erupted into applause, and Vernon joined her on stage, embracing her under the spotlight. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Vernon called the former students to the stage. One by one, they came up, many holding signs with messages of gratitude. You taught me to read. Your patience got me to college. Thanks to you, I'm a teacher today. The messages showcased Mabel's impact on each life. Social media lit up. Within minutes, videos and photos of the moment flooded the internet. The hashtag #ThankYouMabel became a global trend. Celebrities and politicians shared the story, emphasizing the importance of teachers in society. As the event drew to a close, Mabel received more unexpected news. The Department of Education announced the creation of an annual scholarship in her name, aimed at future teachers who wanted to follow in her footsteps. The Mabel Hart Scholarship would offer not only financial support, but also personalized mentorship, with Mabel playing an active role in helping new educators start their careers. Mabel's eyes shone. She had found a new purpose, and her story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The announcement of the Mabel Hart Scholarship resonated not only at the ceremony, but across the entire country. Universities and educational institutions began showing interest in the project. Vernon, always quick to spot opportunities to amplify good, saw a chance to turn this initiative into something even bigger. Mabel, what do you think about starting an institute? He suggested on a sunny morning as they sipped coffee on the porch of her new home. An institute? Yes, the Mabel Hart Institute. We could provide ongoing training for teachers, fund educational projects, and create support programs for underprivileged students. Your experience and story could inspire educators everywhere. Mabel's eyes lit up. I'd love that, Vernon. I've always believed education can change lives, and if I can help other teachers believe that too, it would be a dream come true. Within weeks, the institute took shape. Vernon used his contacts and resources to ensure the project had a solid foundation. He rented a building in downtown Portland and assembled a qualified team. Mabel took charge of the educational side, developing training programs and inviting former colleagues to share their experiences. The institute offered free workshops, online courses, and in-person lectures. Teachers from all over the country signed up to learn from Mabel and her team. The impact went beyond theory. The institute launched practical programs, sending educators to public schools to support struggling students and mentor new teachers. The scholarship program expanded. With support from businesses and donations from everyday people, the Mabel Hart Institute managed to not only support new teachers, but also provide financial assistance to schools in underserved areas. Equipment, educational materials, and even infrastructure renovations were made possible by the movement sparked by Mabel's story. Meanwhile, Mabel's presence on social media continued to grow. Her sincere and warm approach captivated audiences of all ages. She began recording short videos, sharing tips for teachers, telling classroom stories, and most importantly, reinforcing the need to believe in every student's potential. In one of these videos, Mabel shared Kyle's story, the former student who had passed away, and how she held both her victories and losses close to her heart. The video went viral, reaching millions of views. Mabel's honesty and vulnerability touched people in a unique way. Vernon, always by her side, used his influence to take the institute to new heights. He organized charity events, invited celebrities, and even secured a documentary about Mabel's story. The film, titled The Invisible Teacher, toured film festivals and received critical acclaim, bringing even more attention to the cause. During the documentary's premiere, Mabel took the stage once again. Beside her stood Vernon and a crowd of former students, teachers, and children whose lives had been impacted by her work. I never imagined my story would go this far, but this only happened because one day someone believed in me. Now I want every teacher and every student to know that there is always hope. There is always a chance to start over. As applause echoed through the auditorium, Mabel realized the greatest gift of all was seeing her legacy multiply. And when she looked at Vernon, she knew the genuine kindness of this man had been the key to it all. Years passed, but the impact of the Mabel Hart Institute only grew. The original building in Portland became a network of educational centers in cities across the United States. Each location offered teacher training, tutoring for children, and special programs for vulnerable families. The scholarship, which started small, now carried Mabel's name beyond national borders. Young people from diverse backgrounds inspired by her story were becoming teachers, spreading messages of hope and resilience in their own communities. Vernon remained the Institute's right hand. Despite his busy schedule, he was actively involved in decision-making, helping with fundraising and leveraging his influence to build strong partnerships. Together, Mabel and Vernon became an unstoppable force in education. One spring morning, Mabel received a special letter. The Nobel Committee announced that she had been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of her transformative work in education. The nomination came after a series of international reports highlighted how the Mabel Hart Institute was changing lives, especially in communities where education was often neglected. "This is unbelievable, Vernon," she said, her hands trembling as she held the paper. "I never did anything seeking recognition. And that's exactly why you deserve it, Mabel. You've always given your all without expecting anything in return. Now the world is just giving back," he replied, with his proud smile that never wavered. The news quickly spread through the media. Social networks flooded with messages of support and love. The video of the moment Vernon found Mabel on the streets years before resurfaced, touching a new generation of viewers. On the day of the Nobel ceremony, Mabel took the stage in Oslo, surrounded by applause. Her speech was simple yet profound. "When I started teaching, my greatest goal was to see the sparkle in children's eyes when they learned something new. When life put me in a tough situation, I thought that sparkle had faded. But thanks to reuniting with a former student, I discovered that what we plant is never in vain. If I'm here today, it's because kindness exists and life gives us second chances. Education doesn't just transform students, it transforms teachers too. And this exchange is what makes us human." Vernon, watching from the front row, couldn't hold back his tears. He knew this moment was not just a victory for Mabel, but for everyone who believed in the power of education and the importance of caring for one another. After the Nobel, the Institute received even more support. Companies partnered to fund international projects. Mabel and Vernon began traveling together to bring educational programs to developing countries, adapting the Institute's teachings to different cultures and needs. Their story became a book, The Teacher Who Never Gave Up, which quickly became a bestseller. Mabel dedicated every page to teachers who, like her, fought daily to make a difference. In the following years, Mabel took on a more advisory role at the Institute. Her body could no longer match the energy of her mind, but she remained active, recording videos, attending meetings, and visiting schools whenever possible. When Mabel turned 80, Vernon organized a grand celebration. The event brought together teachers, students, institute partners, and friends who had been part of their journey. During the tribute, a video showcased testimonials from people around the world, thanking her for everything they had learned from her. As the final surprise, Vernon announced the construction of a new institute headquarters, the Mabel Hart School of Education, where teachers would be trained following the values she always championed: empathy, patience, and love for others. That day, surrounded by so many beloved faces, Mabel felt she had fulfilled her purpose. It wasn't just about recognition, awards, or honors. What truly mattered was knowing the seeds she had planted continued to grow, bringing hope to places she might never see. As the sun set, Mabel looked at Vernon. "Thank you for stopping at that traffic light that day." He held her hand. "It was the best stop I ever made." And so, with a light heart and the certainty that her legacy would never be forgotten, Mabel smiled. Because, in the end, true wealth lay in the ability to change lives, something she did better than anyone. Mabel and Vernon's story shows that life can surprise us when we least expect it, that kindness bears fruit, and that a teacher's impact goes far beyond the classroom. They didn't just change their own lives, they created a movement that would continue inspiring generations. Have you ever had a teacher who changed your life? Share your story with us in the comments. Your experience might inspire others. If you loved this touching story, don't go anywhere. In our next video, you'll be even more amazed by another incredible tale of resilience and kindness. Click now and keep feeling all the feels with us.